Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Ralph Eisler.
And I am Chad Headley. We want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you are not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and free of supernatural beliefs.
On today's show, we have a discussion of Constitution Day and the origin of the United States Constitution.
But first, we want to tell you a little about the sponsors of our show. The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's in Old City, starting around 5:30.
Okay, you can look for the Silver Line Jacket called The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, standing upright on the table. And as Matt Dillahunty says at the Atheist Experience, everyone's welcome to happy hour for fun, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, or provoke, please don't.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday we hold Skeptics Book Club. On the fourth Sunday we are mixing it up, sometimes with a get-together we call a reflections meeting. It features a potluck lunch in someone's home. Sometimes we meet to play board games or similar activities. Now and then we have a blood drive too.
Yeah. Later in the show, we'll give you the websites to visit for additional details, including times and locations. But right now, let's go to our next segment, which is In the News. We have some brief items here. First one is on Friday, September 11th, the Huffington Post reported that a new billboard featuring biblical references had been erected in Moorhead, Kentucky, the hometown of Rowan County Clerk Kim Davis. Kim is the woman who wouldn't sign the marriage certificates to let gay people get married, and finally turned out she was signing no certificates. And this has been just one of those dramas which I'm sure everybody has followed, whether they wanted to or not, on the local TVs.
The billboard's message was brief and simply stated, "Dear Kim Davis, the fact that you can't sell your daughter for 3 goats and a cow means we've already redefined marriage."
Yeah, this is the problem with a lot of these people who can't bring themselves to violate one of the commandments or one of the Old Testament laws, but they can bring themselves to violate all the rest of them practically. So, strange situation. Anyhow, Hamilton County, Tennessee Judge Jeffrey Atherton denied a divorce to a straight couple on the grounds that the Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage had marred Tennessee's ability to determine what constitutes a divorce. Now, this seems totally silly. I mean, they've been granting divorces for years to same-sex couples. Nothing has changed there.
Yeah, clearly he's grandstanding. On September 9th and September 11th, local news station WVLT posted stories on their Facebook page regarding the teaching of Islam in Knox County schools. Melissa Ogden, spokesperson for Knox County Schools, said that some parents might be misinformed and the continuation of history calls for the teaching about all major world religions.
Yeah, there was a story in the Maryville paper, I guess it was last Friday or Saturday, something like that, where a volunteer parent had been dismissed because he came into a class that was teaching about religion, and he taught the children about the 7 pillars of Islam as well as other religions, etc. And so this got some people all up in a lather, and that's what we're talking about here right now, that some of these fundamentalist Christians can't stand the idea that their children would learn about anything else. It's not that they're being indoctrinated. Anyhow, in a later story, a state lawmaker who happens to be running for re-election called for revision of the world religion class curriculum next January. referencing nothing specific about the curriculum and instead the September 11th attacks, the recent Chattanooga shootings, and claims that school children are being prohibited from flying flags and discouraged from praying. Well, that's actually not true. This is something the religious right brings up all the time. Children are not prevented from praying in school, praying off by themselves. What is prevented is the school sponsoring religious prayer of one sect or another in the schools. So I don't know what we can say about this. People never learn. They keep wanting to push the hot buttons on this type of thing. And children are not prohibited from flying flags, I don't think. You think they are?
If prayer in school is prohibited, give us about 2 weeks. We'll see you at the poll.
Okay. Well, today's show is about Constitution Day, the commemoration of September 17th, 1787.
This is a call-in show, so we would invite you to participate with your question or comments by calling the number on your screen.
Okay. So on September 17th, 1787, delegates to the Constitutional Convention approved documents that would become the United States Constitution. September 17th was first recognized by Iowa schools in 1911 as Constitution Day. It would later be known elsewhere as I Am an American Day and Citizenship Day. In 2004, law was created formalizing the observance under Title 36 of the United States Code, Section 106, Constitution Day and Citizenship Day.
Purpose: Constitution Day and Citizenship Day commemorate the formation and signing on September 17, 1787 of the Constitution and recognize all who, by coming of age or by naturalization, have become citizens. The first colonial constitution was Connecticut's, starting with fundamental orders written in 1639 and finally the Charter of Connecticut in 1662. Here are passages in the Charter of Connecticut demonstrating religious overtones passed down from English rule.
Charles II, by the grace of God, King of England, Scotland, France, and Ireland, defender of the faith, to all to whom these presents shall come, greetings. Speaking of the relationship between the colonists and Native Americans, as their good life and orderly conversation may win and invite the natives of the country to the knowledge and obedience of the only true God, and He, Savior of mankind, and the Christian faith, which in our royal intentions in the adventurous free possession is the only and principal end of this plantation. I should mention that you know, when relations were going really bad with England by around 1776, then all these colonies were encouraged to write their own constitutions instead of operating under these charters from the kings of England on there. And so most of them did that. And in several of these colonies had established religions. 3 of them were, I believe, Congregationalist, and 6 out of 13 were Episcopalian, that is the Church of England. Established church means that the government collects taxes and helps pay for part of the operations of those churches. That's the very thing some of them were trying to get away from when they came from England anyhow. But anyway, let's see.
Later, formal constitutions were written with preambles and articles of the Constitution. Most included some religious test. South Carolina, 1778. In Article 13, South Carolina requires belief in a God as a condition to vote. In Article 38, South Carolina provides freedom of religion for monotheistic religions, establishes the Christian Protestant religion as the one true religion and religion of the state.
Yeah. And then we have Delaware in 1776 which says in Article 22, every person shall be chosen a member of either house or appointed to any office or place of trust before taking his seat or entering upon the execution of his office. He shall take the following oath or affirmation, if conscientiously scrupulous of taking an oath, to wit, I do profess faith in God the Father and in Jesus Christ his only Son, and in the Holy Ghost, one God, blessed for everyone, forevermore. And I do acknowledge the Holy Scriptures of the Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration. So you can see that in these colonies, people were really very much in tune with the church. That is, there was not so much separation between church and state in many of these. And as we go on and read some of these, we find out how it was a long haul, perhaps, to get rid of established religion in the Constitution, at least among some of the people in the states. But
North Carolina, 1776. The North Carolina Declaration of Rights includes an article providing religious freedom. Article 19, that all men have a natural and unalienable right to worship Almighty God according to the dictates of their own conscience. While the North Carolina Constitution includes a contradicting article requiring religious tests for public office. Article 32, that no person who shall deny the being of God or the truth of the Protestant religion or the divine authority either of the Old or New Testaments, or who shall hold religious principles incompatible with the freedom and safety of the state, shall be capable of holding any office or place of trust or profit in the civil department within this state.
then in Pennsylvania in 1776, why we find the following words. Pennsylvania includes a statement, similar statement of freedom of religion and contradictory religious tests for office. Article 2, that all men have natural and inalienable right of worship to Almighty God according to the dictates of their own consciences and understanding, and that no man ought or of right can be compelled to attend any religious worship or erect or support any place of worship or maintain any ministry contrary to or against his own free will and consent.
While Section 10 of the Frame of Government includes the contradicting religious test, and each member, before he takes his seat, shall make and subscribe the following declaration. I do believe in one God, the Creator and Governor of the universe, the rewarder of good and the punisher of the wicked. And I do acknowledge in the Scriptures of the Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration.
And then we come to Vermont. Vermont included a religious freedom clause with preference to denominations of Christianity. Again, there's a contradictory religious test for public office, though. You do believe in one God, the Creator and Governor of the universe, the rewarder of the good, and the punisher of the wicked. Today we have publishers of the wicked too. And you do acknowledge the Scriptures of Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspirations and own and profess the Protestant religion. Georgia in 1777, the Constitution of Georgia requires the phrase, so help me God, in oath of office. But of course we have seen that required in many places since then. So, right? Even today, the president swears in on the Bible. Members of Congress swear in on the Bible.
I did a lot of research into this, and I wasn't able to find anything before Georgia that required "So help me God" in an oath of office.
Yeah, but it's sort of caught on since then, I guess.
Seems to have stuck. New Jersey in 1776, the New Jersey Constitution contains one interesting article regarding religion. Article 18, that no person shall ever within this colony be deprived of the inestimable privilege of worshiping Almighty God in a manner agreeable to the dictates of his own conscience, nor under any presence whatever be compelled to attend any place of worship contrary to his own faith and judgment, nor shall any person in this colony ever be obliged to pay tithes, taxes, or any other rates for the purpose of building or repairing any other church or churches, place or places of worship, or for the maintenance of any minister or ministry, contrary to what he believes to be right or has deliberately or voluntarily engaged himself to perform. New Hampshire, 1776. The New Hampshire Constitution contains no religious references at all. None.
Yes, and also in contrast to these tests, New York and Virginia had none prior to the Constitutional Convention. The Virginia situation is particularly notable. The Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom was drafted in 1777, though it was not introduced into the Virginia General Assembly until 1779 by Thomas Jefferson in the city of Fredericksburg, Virginia. On January 16, 1786, the Assembly enacted the statute into state's law. The statute disestablished the Church of England in Virginia. As I mentioned before, 9 of the 13 colonies had established churches, so this was the first time this had ever happened in a colony that had an established church, and it's particularly notable in Virginia, where the first settlement in Jamestown, which began in 1607, had an established church, which was the Church of England, and was formed by charter to the Virginia Company and given by James I. Anyhow, Virginia had a long-standing established church. So the statute disestablished the Church of England in Virginia and guaranteed freedom of religion to people of all religious faiths, including Catholics and Jews, as well as members of all Protestant denominations. The statute was a notable precursor of the Establishment Clause and Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment to the United States. However, it did not actually become part of Virginia's Constitution until 1830. But this is one of the accomplishments, one of the 3 accomplishments that Jefferson said he would like to have acknowledged on his tombstone. He was so proud of it. Anyhow, there is no mention of religion in the original U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 2, the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. States' rights are also discussed in the original U.S. Constitution, but later in the 10th Amendment.
Separation of church and state is first addressed in the Bill of Rights under the First Amendment to the Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, the Establishment Clause, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, the Free Exercise Clause. Many have argued that this guarantees freedom of religion, but not freedom from religion. Since many religions differ or conflict with one another, to side with any religion is an establishment of that religion and a prohibition of free exercise of another religion.
Well, let's talk about this a little bit. Does it really establish freedom from religion, in your opinion?
I think in the first look, it doesn't do that. But if you read it and consider that to side with any one religion would be to agree with most religions that claim to be the one true religion, and to side against any other religion.
Yeah, I tend to take a pretty liberal view of that. Of course, viewers here might expect it, I would. But I think that it does guarantee freedom from religion. I think that it implies there should be no religious coercion one way or the other, either towards a particular religion or towards a general Christianity or Islam or anything else. So I would argue vehemently that freedom from religion is something that the founders and the writers of the Constitution had in mind if a person wanted to be free of religion, if he were an atheist. Anyhow, many people have also argued that this applies to the United States Congress and not the individual state Congress, so far as religion, freedom from religion goes, or the no exercise or imposition of religion, that the states can do what they want. Prior to the First Amendment, though, there was no concept of states' rights. And so this doesn't seem to be a sensible argument. States' rights were enacted in the 10th Amendment, and the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to it by the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Now, this brings up a general problem in my view, that this Constitution was written, almost 250 years ago, about 240 years ago. And the social situation was really very different at that time. And I don't see how people today can say that we ought to be strictly tied to what people probably imagined the Constitution would have said at the time, particularly so far as things like bearing arms or no imposition of religion by the federal government. This doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to live 250 years in the past in a different social situation. So I think, and we have a mechanism for amending the Constitution. It's pretty cumbersome. And what happens now is that laws or lawsuits, whatever, eventually wind their way to the Supreme Court to determine their constitutionality. And so the Supreme Court winds up interpreting the Constitution. And this present court has interpreted in such a way that they've made everybody on both sides mad because of some decisions. The gay rights marriage issue has made the conservatives mad. The Citizens United issue, where you've put people can put as much money into the campaign as they want, where corporations are considered people, if they do it the right way, of course. It has angered the people on the left because it gives too much power to those who have a great deal of wealth. So anyhow, I think there's a general problem with constitutional interpretation that is very difficult to resolve. It leads to a lot of difficulty in the country, and perhaps ways of modifying the contribution shall be somewhat different. Okay, so we end up now that we don't have any. We have this First Amendment to the Constitution, and it was introduced by Charles Pinckney, who was the governor of South Carolina, and it was adopted with very little debate by the people who were attending the convention. Okay, we have a caller here. Hello, caller. You're connected. Can you give us a name or a nickname?
Yeah, this is Charles from Central Illinois.
Oh, hi, Charles. How you doing?
Yeah, you're talking about the Constitution.
Yeah.
And the Constitution Day. Well, back when I was still in junior college in San Diego, one of our teachers there had a thing about it, since it was like close to the 150th birthday of the day of the ratification of the Constitution. He had us go through a lot of the arguments and so forth.
Uh-huh.
One of the things that should be noted is that at the Continental Convention, we have the writings of Madison. And we know went on at that Continental Convention.
Yeah, correct.
And he pointed, and it should be pointed out that at no point at any time during that convention did anybody came up with the idea of having religious tests or anything like that, except for Benjamin Franklin, and that was immediately shot down.
Yeah.
So the idea that the Republic of the United States was founded first and foremost as a Christian nation dies right then and there.
Yep, you're right, Charles. And you know what's interesting about it, that all of these signers at that of the Declaration, not of Declaration, but of the Constitution there, they nominally all belong to churches, divided mostly between Congregationalists and Episcopalians and one Catholic. But even though so, they recognized that religious freedom, that is, no established church, should be the law of the land.
They're probably remembering the mass butchery of the 30 Years' War,
Yeah.
the various and sundry pomegranates throughout Europe, the conflicts in England between the Anglicans, the Catholics, the Presbyterians, and so forth.
Yeah.
And that was something they were determined not to allow.
That's right. I think that's why they did not put those religious tests into the Constitution. They saw the carnage that had been wrought, and they did not want it to happen here. So we all agree that the word Christianity is mentioned nowhere in either Constitution or Declaration of Independence, and any references to God in the Declaration of Independence are only vague deistic type references to the Creator and things like this.
Agreed. Now, one of the important things to note is during the history of Vermont, when it was first formed, it was formed out of the New Hampshire grants by dissidents out of the state of New York.
Ah.
They declared themselves to be an independent sovereign state. I think it was 1768, I think it was. And in their founding document, they were the first European state to specifically ban, European-based state, ban slavery.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I looked that up when I was heard of a young lady by the name of Kate Farr, lives in Washington State, said she was from Vermont, and she does YouTube violent dance, and she mentioned about how unreligious Vermont is, so I got interested and looked it up.
Oh.
And yeah, they actually was the first state, sovereign state, European-based, that has actually banned slavery.
Do you know when that ban took effect by chance?
I think it was something like 1774.
Wow.
Oh, that's very interesting. I didn't know that. So anyhow, we're into Constitution Day, and it doesn't seem to get widespread attention here.
It really should.
Yeah.
Because very few people know that before there was a Republic of the United States, it was the Confederation of the United States.
Yeah.
With a considerably different form of government and a lot more troubles.
Oh, yeah, right. The Articles of Confederation were really not very helpful. I think they were mostly discarded when our Constitution was written, or they were severely changed in any case.
Yeah, that was that whole thing that the interstate trade
Yeah.
If you traded to your neighbor's state, you could get a surtax put on it by
Yeah.
your state.
Yeah.
If you bought stuff from another state, you got a surtax on that. Then there was the problem of there was no standing military whatsoever because it was none of the state's governments were willing to shell out any money at all, and the central government didn't have any way of taxation of any kind.
Right. There was no really strong central government there, and of course, even that was resisted by many people. Even when our Constitution was signed, people wanted to reserve rights to the states. But that's another thing that bothers me a little. I've often wondered whether the concept of states is an anachronism now. We are a very homogeneous country now. People move from one place to another. They don't get born in a town and live there for the rest of their lives, for the most part. Much more mobile population.
It's not just the mobility. You can, pick up a phone and talk to somebody in Florida from,
Oh, sure.
Kodiak, Alaska.
Sure.
Back in the 1800s, the fastest way to get information anywhere was the telegraph, and if the telegraph wasn't available, then you had to use the mail system, and that could take weeks, if not months.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm thinking a little more in the way of, parochial thinking now. For example, we live down here in the South, and you'll find a lot of people say, well, we don't want them Yankees coming down here giving us ideas or whatever. And they just don't realize how much the country has become homogenized, and they don't live in little isolated enclaves anymore. So,
I come from Indiana. I find it to be more conservative than Tennessee.
I wouldn't doubt that in many respects it is. Mike Pence just signed one of these
Religious Freedom Restoration Act.
Religious Freedom Restoration Acts, very proudly.
Yeah, and I have an excellent book called, as my history teacher told me, that demonstrates that what they're talking about never actually existed. It was always whatever happened to be the dominant group. Religion was the dominant group, and they weren't going to allow other people in.
Yeah. Charles, do you know who Cal Thomas is?
It doesn't ring any bells.
He's a very conservative writer, very religious writer. And he had an article which I think was up on the Fox News website, and it was published this last Sunday in the Knoxville News Sentinel. And it starts out saying, America never was a Christian country, and goes on from there. And this I find to be extremely strange for somebody of his background and his leanings, and especially.
And it wound up on Fox News website?
I think so. I think that's where originally was published. I can't absolutely guarantee that, but that's what I think. And you'll notice that Fox News in this Kim Davis situation has not been very supportive of her. And so I think maybe they're getting a little antsy, thinking that if they come across as being beholden too much to these religious fanatics, that the Republican Party is going to suffer for it.
The Republican Party already is.
Yeah.
Have you heard what the latest from Huckabee was?
Tell me. I might have heard it.
He said something to the effect that the Dred Scott decision
of the
Supreme Court is still law of the land.
Yeah. I don't know how people like him get along in the world. I must have others who think much the same way and support him or whatever. But Yeah, he's a doozy. So, and I don't like to make this into a political program, but with all these 16 people running for the Republican Party, more than half of them, say they're going to govern according to their religious beliefs if they get elected. So that's kind of scary for people like us.
Then there's that situation in Kansas that I'm finding very weird.
Yeah.
The one where the governor has decided that if the Kansas State Supreme Court didn't rule with him, he's going to cut the budget completely.
Yeah, that's weird. He's another weird case who just, I don't know, doesn't seem to be bound by any sort of constitutional law in any ways, even the Kansas state law, I don't think. I mean, he's a really right-wing conservative, and got into big trouble with the budget deficits because of cutting taxes, et cetera, et cetera.
He cut taxes and cut taxes and cut taxes, but kept spending the state's money and kept spending the state's money.
Yeah, it was similar to George Bush, who started war in Iraq and had the biggest change to our Medicare by putting in the prescription drug part of Medicare and cut taxes at the same time to not pay for it. So anyhow, we're drifting off a little bit maybe into the political region rather than the constitutional.
Yeah.
So
now, you can't talk about the Constitution without talking about politics.
Yeah.
And how people are misinformed on the debates over the Constitution. They really, we need to start getting people to read more of the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist papers.
Yeah,
which was the huge debate in all the newspapers that led up to the Continental Congress.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you for calling in, Charles. I really appreciate talking to you. I haven't been here for a while, so it's always good to hear from you.
Okay.
Thanks, Charles.
Thanks again. Okay, well, that was an interesting conversation. I always like to have Charles call in. So we've got about 20 minutes left in the program, and so we're going to take a little break for sponsor identification. In case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Knoxville Community Access Television, Channel 12 or Channel 194, depending upon your local cable network. Tell your out-of-town friends to see us streaming online at ctvknox.org.
Again, this is a call-in show, and we are live today, September 15th, 2015. Viewers can call in now to the number on the screen with a short comment or question. Call in now while we resume our program.
So, so Sam, can you play the video for us?
The Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else? Well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun. Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
Okay, well, we're back. The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets 2 times a week. We have evening meetups for fun, food, drink, conversation. And ASK's purpose is to supply a venue for community camaraderie and outreach to atheists, agnostics, freethinkers, and other like-minded people in East Tennessee. Our Tuesday meeting's going on now at the Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in the Knoxville Old City.
The second Sunday of the month is the Skeptics Book Club. The title of October's book is Hardwiring Happiness by Rick Hansen. The public is invited to participate. You need not have read the book to attend, but of course it helps. Visit rationalist.org to find the rest of the calendar of books and join us at the new location, Books A Million, 8513 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay. Well, both the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee help provide a social outlet where you'll find that if you don't believe in Zeus or follow Zoroaster or to Yahweh, whatever, we will, you're not alone.
You are not alone.
Yeah, okay. All right, so let's look a little bit at some of the language that presently exists in states' constitutions and how it tends to be discriminating against freethinkers.
Most states adopted a policy of no religious tests shortly after the Constitution was ratified. Vermont and New Jersey held out until 1844, New Hampshire until 1877, but not until 1961 were all state rests declared unconstitutional. Nevertheless, there remains discriminatory language in the constitutions of several states against atheists.
For instance, Maryland, Article 37, that no religious test ought ever to be required as a qualification for any office of profit or trust in this state, other than a declaration of belief in the existence of God, nor shall the legislature prescribe any other oath of office than the oath prescribed by this convention. But you see, you have to believe in God according to that article in order to have access to public office. Now, I think maybe these things will change. We don't have the Tennessee one down here. Oh yeah, we do. We'll come to the Tennessee one. We could discuss that a little more.
In Mississippi, Article 14, Section 265, no person who denies the existence of a supreme being shall hold any office in this state.
Now, okay. In North Carolina, Article 6, Section 8 says the following person shall be disqualified for office: any person who shall deny the being of Almighty God. But everybody has a different perception of what Almighty God is. So they don't distinguish, just so long as you acknowledge some God.
South Carolina, Article 17, Section 4, no person who denies the existence of a supreme being shall hold any office under this Constitution.
Okay, and in Tennessee, no person who denies the being of God or a future state of rewards and punishments shall hold any office in the civil department of this state. I mean, you not only have to believe in God, you have to believe that you're only going to be either rewarded or punished in some nebulous afterlife. Now, the Tennessee Constitution also prohibited clergy from running for office, holding elective office. And this was challenged a few years ago by somebody who was a preacher, and he challenged it successfully. It was declared to be unconstitutional, and I think he ran for office. I don't know whether he actually got elected or not. But nevertheless, the language still remains in the Constitution. Nobody has the temerity to bring up a bill and said this has been declared unconstitutional, and so we should take it out. Well, anyhow, And then we still have Texas, good old Texas.
Texas, Article 1, Section 4, no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust in this state, nor shall anyone be excluded from holding office on account of his religious sentiments, provided he acknowledge the existence of a supreme being.
Yeah, so I don't know. Again, remember it's the Collins Show, and a few people out there have any feelings about this. I mean, our show appeals a lot to various types of free thinkers, and they are excluded from public office in several states here, according to the constitutions. I'm sure if anyone actually brought these up and they went to the Supreme Court, they'd be declared unconstitutional at this time. However, there is still the fact of de facto prejudice against atheists. That is, even if they took these out of the Constitution, if an atheist is running for office, he's going to have a very hard time in the state of Tennessee and in some of the other more conservative southern states. In fact, just recently there was a contest for the mayor of Nashville, and the lady, I forget the name of the two people who were actually running, but one fellow accused the woman who's running against him as being an atheist because she didn't say under God in the Pledge of Allegiance. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But you can see the type of thinking that people try to push into other minds, that you know, that atheists are somehow people with fangs and pitchforks, et cetera, et cetera. And you also find people saying, well, you guys worship the devil, you know? And we don't worship the devil any more than we worship a God, okay? That we find that both are sort of imaginary beings. So, well, we've gone through these discussions here about the religious tests, etc., and we should maybe go back and review just a little bit how people can say this country was founded as a Christian nation. And if we start, as I said, with the Jamestown settlement in 1607, and consider them the founders, why it definitely wasn't. That had nothing to do with it. In fact, it was a commercial enterprise for the most part. But they'll tell you also people came here looking for religious freedom. Now, the first prominent group that came, at least prominent in the minds of people, were the so-called Puritans. And these were a group of people who were actually part of the Puritan movement, but they were called separatists because they wanted to separate from the Church of England. They didn't think it could be reformed. And so they first moved to Holland, and then when they thought their children were becoming too Dutchified, so to speak, then they moved here. And they formed the Plymouth colony and its offshoots, these various little towns in New England. And each town was a separate congregation. You didn't have to belong to the congregation, but it was expected you'd go to church. So they seemed to be kind of mild-mannered, not too bad, pleasant people. And they may have been the only group I can think of who did seem to come here for the purpose of religious freedom. The next prominent group we hear about are the Puritans. This is the group that didn't like the Church of England, but they didn't want to just shuck it off and not have anything to do with it. They wanted to take control. And so they made such pests of themselves that eventually they effectively got kicked out of England. And they did come here, and they were not at all interested in religious freedom. because church and state were not separate in the New England colonies that the Puritans settled in. They were totally intertwined, and you could be punished very severely for deviations from what the religious laws were, what the religious beliefs were. We've all seen pictures of these stocks and pillories, right? That people were put into. And they, at one point, they even hanged a few Quakers. They didn't like the Quakers very much. So, and then, of course, other people did come here trying to get some freedom. Quakers, as I say, nobody seemed to like them, and they settled in Pennsylvania, where William Penn was given the charter for the state. Catholics settled in Maryland, and so we did have a strong religious background in the country, but I would maintain that not many people came for the sole purpose of seeking religious freedom, that there were probably very few. The most came for economic opportunity.
Right. The charters, almost every one contained mention of some company or some corporation that was the de facto rule.
Yes.
And the church was the method of enforcing that rule.
Yes, in many cases it was. And so leading up then to that constitutional convention, as I say, why we certainly had people who had religious backgrounds. I say all 56 signers, so far as I can tell, belonged to some church or another. But they were also strongly influenced by the idea of deism, which arose along with the Enlightenment and with the beginnings of science. I think that you had a God who created the world and set it in motion, but didn't have anything to do with day-to-day operations. And so, again, people who want to say this was founded as a Christian country and point out to the religious affiliations of a lot of these signers and Constitution and other founders, they just, I think, have things pretty wrong. Although these people were affiliated, we're talking 250 years ago, and almost everybody was affiliated with the church, one way or another. It was just the normal social fabric of the time. So I don't know what you think about that, but again, it seems to me that to point to the past as the rigid guide that we should be following in the future, it's very much tied with the religion outlook on life, that you know, religious ideas never change, okay? God is unchanging. His commands never change. And so looking back to how people live in the past, I think we should live the same way now. Of course, we wouldn't have cars or airplanes or computers or whatever other goodies. But
Or in the case of Mississippi, vaccines, Mississippi is one of the, has one of the highest vaccination rates.
Really?
They have no religious exemption clause that I know of.
Oh, yeah.
So that gives them one of the highest vaccination rates for...
Yeah, and as I understand it, California just passed the law. Same. Okay, we have another caller. We only have a couple minutes left. Hello, caller. Can you give us a name or nickname?
Oh, yeah, Mike.
Mike, hi.
Hello.
Hello.
I talked to the fellow in the solid blue shirt.
Yeah.
I had asked the fellow that answered the phone there about y'all being atheists and stuff, and I asked him, I said, do you think we're the only animal form here on Earth that has a soul? What do you think about that?
What do we think about whether people have souls?
Correct. I mean, do you think, like, when we stop breathing and we pass away, die, whatever, that it's just done and over with, and nothing happens after that? Or I'd ask him, was this religious thing like just a money game, sort of like a lot of other stuff is in this world?
Well, let's put it this way. We're all made of exactly the same elements, the same 92 stable elements as anything else. Human beings are no different. And so far as I can see, when one dies, there's nothing else there. You just, your body simply stops those little chemical reactions that keep you above thermal equilibrium. And so I would have to answer you simply, no, I don't believe there's such a thing as the soul. What do you think, Chad?
Okay.
I don't believe there is. I think a lot of people, even some people who don't believe in an afterlife, don't believe in gods or a god, still want to believe there's something after death. But the sad reality to me is that there probably isn't.
Yeah, you know.
So how did us as humans, do you think like we actually come from the ocean and transformed and become Neanderthals? And I watch a lot of programs called Ancient Aliens.
Yeah.
And they show a lot of stuff that happened thousands of years ago that we still can't really actually do today, especially considering the tools they supposedly had to work with. And it's very intriguing to me how certain areas in this country or world actually that relate to other areas, and it makes me sort of feel like sometimes that maybe something from way beyond our solar system or whatever may have actually had something to do with us, or maybe that was lost at some period in time in this world, you know?
Well, you know, those programs, those ancient alien programs, they're entertaining.
Yeah.
But, you know, they try to play on the belief that something that human beings couldn't have accomplished what they said was accomplished. And that's not necessarily true.
They try today, and with our modern technology and certain areas in this country, they've cut in certain types of stone that and done it so such a precision that it's very hard for us to do today.
Well, I'd be a little suspicious of what they put on. I'm glad you called, and I wish you'd have called a little earlier in the show because I think this was a good discussion. And if you call back again next week, maybe we can talk longer. We're going to have to sign off now, though.
All right, okay. But I'd like to go to Pumapunka and just see what that looks like.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Well, it's time to start wrapping things up. Get out your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Ralph Eisler.
And I'm Chad Headley. Please send us feedback. Leave voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
Okay, well, you can see this show on Tuesdays from 5 to 6 Eastern most time on this Knoxville station, or you can see it on streaming at ctvknox.org.
The opinions expressed on this show are of the host and the guest, not any official opinion of Ask or RET. We would like to thank our viewers and send our thanks to Sam Jonas for technical support, to the staff